let's do this again. And maybe nobody will hear this, but in case people are hearing this, welcome to That Can't Be Right, a podcast about exploring structural wrongs, cultural oddities, and wild opinions. I am your host, Ryan Rogan. I am I don't even know if it's sad. I'm disappointed in the recording software I used because we had some gems. And the recording software just kept giving up on us. Like, who's someone who's given up recently on their team, notably in the tri-state area? Never mind. Follow along at TCBR Pod on Twitter and Instagram if you want more fun commentary. And please leave 5-star reviews in Apple Podcasts, one for each trip to the ALCS that the Astros have made in the last 5 years. But first, we already did all of it, but first, before we get to the episode, you need to know who the guest is. So, my guest today is Dr. Courtney M. Cox, assistant professor in the Department of Indigenous, Race, and Ethnic Studies at the University of Oregon. Her research examines issues related to identity, technology, and labor within sport. Her current book project, Double Crossover, Gender, Politics, and Performance in Basketball, considers how Black women and non-binary athletes maneuver through the global sports media complex. She's also co-director with Dr. Perry B. Johnson of The Sound of Victory, a multi-platform digital humanities project located at the intersection of music, sound, and sport. Also, a very good friend. Dr. Cox, got it right this time. Welcome to That Can't Be Right.
What is up? When you're talking about people giving up, I was like, man, Ben Simmons is right there. But I was like, I don't even want to do it to him. That's a very complicated labor thing. We will not waste our time with the men today. But that's also cannot be right.
Yes, I like the framing. We won't waste our time with men today, which honestly should be a daily policy. But I'm excited. I'm excited because I can hear you. I can see you. Which was not happening previously. But today, we are talking about the Atlanta Dream. And if you're not familiar, the Atlanta Dream are the WNBA franchise in Georgia. And they have been going through it, I would say, for the last, since the team was brought to the WNBA, franchise was brought to WNBA. But most notably, we're going to focus on the last 2 years before we get to, let's say, 2020 for them. Here's what's important for people to know about the Atlanta Dream. 2008, joined the league. Founders, some rich white guy that got rich through real estate, which is clearly the path to owning a sports franchise. But they came out of the gate pretty hot. Went to the WNBA finals 3 times in their first 5 seasons, 2010, 2011, and 2013. And they've had a couple coaches, notably Fred Williams, Michael Cooper, who won championships with the Los Angeles Sparks, Nikki Collin, who we'll get to, who kind of skedaddled out of there at the last minute. And then, of course, if you're thinking, oh, the Atlanta Dream, I've heard of them because, the lady Kelly Loeffler, she bought the team in 2011. And I'm always curious, like in hindsight, is like, oh, she was terrible. But looking at articles from 2011, it was like, was there like a big girl boss energy around her? So finally, Courtney, you get to talk again. Can you guess what her nickname was since you haven't heard it in the last 12 minutes?
I'm going to guess Kelly Loeffler. So I'm a big nickname. When I give people nicknames, I really kind of start with initials. So KL, I'm going to say she gives me big K-Leezy energy.
Close. And I like the rationale, but no, it was NBC. And I'll give you another guess as to what that stands for.
Nope. I was adding a little extra word. I'm going to that's NABC. I'm going to go for a not about change. I don't know.
That is accurate, but it was newborn calf because she was like kind of gangly, I guess. And I think at one point walked with used leg braces, which I'm not making fun of that, but it is a terrible nickname. A little bit more about Kelly Loeffler, which made me LOL as I was reading, is that she they presented her as like a risk taker in investing in the WNBA franchise. And of course, when you're doing like a profile of someone, you have to point to other instances where they took risk. And the primary example that they gave, or not the primary example, but an example that this profile gave was when she wanted to get her MBA and needed money for tuition, she mortgaged land she inherited from her grandparents, which is like, there's no risk involved there. You didn't pay for the land. It's a mortgage. You can pay that back reasonably over 30 years. And it's not going to be like student loan debt, which is awful and does not seem to go down no matter how much you pay it. She also married her boss. I didn't know that. Maybe I missed that in the readings, but, and it should have been a feel good story, but we'll fast forward to 2020 in the 2020 WNBA season. In the midst of 2020, that was a dumpster fire. So, Courtney, what do you remember from the 2020 WNBA season other than like, I'm so happy it's happening and we're going to see these people play? Because summer 2020 wasn't otherwise great.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is living in this current moment that we're in, especially if we think about last year in 2020, it felt like every day was historic. Like every day something, you were like, wow, that could be a whole history book just this week. Yep. And so living in these really unpredictable, unprecedented times in history, especially when you think about like sports stopping and us all being indoors and just kind of having this lack of a sense of time, right? I still don't really have a great sense of time. Sometimes I'm talking about something and I'm like, last week, and I was like, no, that was 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And so there's something that time-wise, there's a temporal aspect of sport that grounds us, right? That kind of lets us know sports seasons ground us. And then we have this really interesting moment where we have the NBA and the WNBA playing at the same time in Florida, in their respective bubbles. The word wubble entered my vocabulary in a way that I wasn't expecting, that I love. It's very fun to say. And I'm very pro wubble in that argument about whether or not that word should be used. And so for me, it gave me both this small semblance of normalcy, even though nothing about it looked or felt or sounded normal. There was this little piece I could get back. There was this little way I could be fully invested in this league that I love. And so that's really what I remember is like, I don't know how they're going to pull this off. I don't know what it's going to look or feel like, but it's back. I'm here for it. In the midst of so much turbulence and chaos, it gave me that. And what I love about the W in particular is it's always going to resonate with whatever's happening outside of the Wubble. And so that season for me is this capsule, right? Bubble capsule of really everything that was happening in the world at that time.
Yes. And I definitely want to talk about how the WNBA, and shout out to, of course, NECA, WNBA Players Association president.
Yes.
But that's definitely up for discussion. And then to center in on I want to chime in. Yes. Having the NBA and the WNBA on at the same time last summer, that was amazing because you could just watch basketball for like 5 hours every night and you couldn't go anywhere. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to miss this because there's nowhere to go. But to focus back on the conversation and the Atlanta Dream, WNBA held the first virtual draft of the major sports leagues. They were the blueprint for that. I think they did it pretty well. You had some really fun moments for some of the players. I remember, I think I sent you like Satu Savali getting drafted and like her sister like texting maybe. But the Atlanta Dream draft Kennedy Hollywood Carter, guard out of Texas A&M University in College Station. First question, did you think she was going to be a good fit for Atlanta? Like, do you remember, oh man, there's too many, will she be a fit with the coach? Did you have any concerns when she came out of A&M?
I'm a Longhorn, so I'm going to try to answer this question as kindly as possible. No, I'm kidding. I think that from me, my alma mater being in the Big 12, I watch a lot of Big 12 basketball. And for me, Chennedy has always felt like a star. Everything I know about her, everything I know from other folks I know in Texas that have followed her since AAU, since way back, she to me is like an instant star, like ready to go. There's a way that some rookies are just so doe-eyed, like and I'm like, oh, the league is going to hit you in the face. There's a lot that's very different about the W from the college game. And so I didn't worry about her. I thought she was already kind of built. I was gonna say built for it tough. So Texas, right? I felt like there was a way that I love her style. Like I love her game. And so for me, I felt like it was a really smart pick. You have someone that's pretty much ready to hit the ground running. Mm-hmm. And so that was my feeling versus a lot of other players in the draft, because of how pandemic had affected the 2020 season. There were a lot of folks that they were a little unknown, right? If we had seen them in high pressure tournament situations this year, we would have more to go off their recent kind of status in the game. But I felt like she was one of those players that I'm like, this might be a once in a lifetime player. We don't know, I didn't know if Atlanta was the most stable franchise for her because of all the things you've already mentioned. And we had no idea about Nikki and a lot of other things at that time. But, for me, I thought that she was a great piece no matter what. She's a plug and play piece that I just felt like she was going to do her thing regardless. And I was really excited going into the season to see her.
Excellent. And in terms of awards, potential season, in the season awards, where did you have her in the WNBA Rookie of the Year watch? There was also obviously another big rookie coming in Sabrina Ionescu. And there is a lot to be said about the amount of coverage different athletes get. Mm-hmm. But I remember but Sue Bird mentioned in one of the many interviews she was doing during the pandemic, that was her pick for Rookie of the Year. Do you remember being Sabrina's going to take it, obviously, or Kennedy could be a dark horse? I put that in air quotes, everybody.
I don't know what I'm allowed to say being at the University of Oregon.
Yes. Conflict of interest.
I've seen a lot of Sabrina, obviously, and Satu and Ruthie. And I think people need to stop sleeping on Ruthie, but that's my own personal feeling. I don't buy into a lot of the hype of end of season awards. They serve a purpose. They're folks that make those decisions. They obviously mean things for folks' contracts. So they're important for that reason. But for me, it's really difficult to know. Rookie of the Year is, to me, the hardest award to predict because you just don't know how someone's game will translate. And the problem with players like Sabrina, and I say problem, but the thing about players that are very dominant leaders in college, you're not going to be that person when you go to New York. You're not, especially New York, but you're not going to be that person in the W. And so however you see yourself as running the point, however you envision your game, you're now the scrub of the team. And some people can adapt to that and some people can't. And so all of the expectations and pressures that were put on Sabrina, to me, begin to make her overhyped, not because of anything of her doing, but when the media is so ready for her to be Rookie of the Year, to be the star player, to average a double-double, all these things, right? They put that on there. It's hard to get Rookie of the Year when there are these oversized expectations. So it's better to come in as an underdog people are sleeping on, right? And then outperform those low expectations. That actually is a better recipe to me for Rookie of the Year, because I feel like she came in with so much on her back, partially because of how she's been mediated, partially because she's an incredible basketball player. And that combination is like an uphill battle. It's a lazy preseason vote to just automatically assume it's her when she's got to rearrange her whole game and figure out how she fits into this one. And that's not easy. It's not easy. It's not easy during a pandemic, especially.
No, you don't have some of the same opportunities to interact or do team bonding trips, because you can't go anywhere and they can't hand you the bill for a team dinner because you're getting delicious catering delivered from whoever's.
Was it delicious? It got delicious eventually. Eventually, there were issues at first.
They got there, serving vegetarians meat and stuff.
Gosh, poor Diamond.
I know. For Chennedy, just to take a look at her stats, she had a pretty good rookie season. She played 16 games, started 16 games, was playing 25 minutes a game, averaging 17 points. And we'll table that for now. But to talk about some of the things you were mentioning earlier about the WNBA, because we do also have to go back to Kelly Loeffler. you mentioned the historic days, historic weeks in 2020, and WNBA athletes took a stance, most notably, I would say, during games, like not necessarily avoiding questions, but making sure to remind the sideline reporters, we are here, we are playing, but we are dedicating this game to Sandra Bland, to Breonna Taylor, to all of these different women who have died at the hands of police. For Kelly specifically, can you tell everyone listening who didn't know or might have forgot what she did that drew the ire of WNBA athletes?
Yeah. So the broad thing, there's a couple of quotes I want to read that I thought were very, very interesting that I had forgotten a little bit about. And I've returned to recently in writing the chapter about this particular season in the bubble. One of the broader things that was reported is Kelly Loeffler did not support her team being part of this broader Black Lives Matter movement. She did not like that Say Her Name and Black Lives Matter was included on the floor in all the conversations, Breonna Taylor's name put on the jerseys for every game, all of these movements. And there's another conversation we had about what players were also doing off of the court in terms of support, connecting with folks like Kimberly Crenshaw and the Say Her Name campaign, all of these things, right? One of the things that she says that resonated with me, she wrote a letter to WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert and said, the truth is we need less, not more politics in sports. In a time when polarizing politics is as divisive as ever, sports has the power to be a unifying antidote. There is no room for racism in this country. We cannot have it. But there is an organization different from the saying, an organization called Black Lives Matter, founded on Marxist principles. Marxism supports socialism, end quote. Okay, so.
Wait, before you explain, I just need to I wish everyone could see Courtney's face as she's trying not to laugh as she reads the quote. But please go.
So here's my thing. We talked a little bit about Kelly and the land and the new baby calf situation happening, right?
Yes.
One of the other things we haven't talked about is her role as a senator, right? So not only an owner of this team, but a senator that is seeking re-election. And this is 2020, an election year. And for me, in that moment, reading all the things that she's saying, all the interviews she's taking, where she is doubling down on this anti-BLM stance, anti her players speaking out, and the ever ending, her version of shut up and dribble, right? We need less, not more politics in sports. What I respect about this is that she doesn't start from the frame that sports are not inherently political. That's the one nice thing I will say about her, maybe for the rest of this episode. The second thing is that there's idea of saying, I'm not a racist, but is the only way I'm reading this, right? This microaggression of someone that says, I'm not a racist, but no offense, but offense and racism are directly following the but, right?
Yeah.
So there's the idea there's no room for racism, but BLM is a Marxist organization that supports socialism. Not going to get into the lack of understanding about the organization, Marxism or socialism. That's outside the confines of this show. But what I think is interesting is she's making these statements. The first half of that, the truth is we need less, not more politics, is what she wrote in the letter. No room for racism, but there's this organization, BLM. She says that statement at a campaign stop. So the difference in how she's framing herself. I read all of this in the moment, and maybe even right now, as being how she's framing herself for this election more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know her from a ham sandwich. I do not know Kelly as a person, but her public persona during that time, to me, was all about garnering votes. She already knew it could be a close election. We did not know at that moment how close, but there was this feeling I think she had of needing to align herself as much as possible with folks that would align themselves with Trump, while also recognizing in Georgia how much she would also need the Black vote. And so when I hear there's no room for racism, but this idea of saying socialism is afoot is how she's trying to navigate this line. So the loud and wrongness of this, to me, is really baked into how she's trying to appease as many folks as possible as this election is coming to a head.
Mm-hmm. You hit the nail on the head, and it is wild to me, again, how Okay, actually, I have a question for you, and you probably would know this answer better than anybody like else. But like, how many other WNBA owners can you name? How many have like a public profile?
Okay, public profile is different. I think that well, now it's so funny. The most publicly recognized owner, well, Magic is probably the Guggenheim Group for the Sparks is probably the most recognized. But now it's actually Atlanta again because of Renee. And so, I think ownership in general, I don't think this is just a WNBA thing. I think most people are not familiar with the ownership groups of other teams outside of their own team.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they are the invisible hand, right?
Yeah.
And so folks are way more knowledgeable about the GMs of their team actually than the owners. People are most familiar with owners. I mean, every league has the prominent ones, the Mark Cubans of the world, the Jerry Joneses of the world, the Kelly Loefflers of the world.
Right.
But there's a lot of unseen folks, right? Until you're like, oh, I know Kraft or Heinz, or, you realize these folks are all behind these massive empires. Like you said, there's this 3-step program, like white male, inherits a lot of money, needs to spend it, wants a tax break, buys a team, right?
Yes.
And so I think that owners themselves, until they are outspoken, I don't think that people knew about Kelly Loeffler outside of when you buy a team, then you might have a couple of those profiles you mentioned, and then you're largely invisible. And so I don't think that's unique to the W. I think that's part of how it has to work, because if we start to question, well, how did that person get that much money to buy a team? Who has at this point in the game, even bad teams are valued at $1 billion in the NBA, for example. So how do you get $1 billion, right? This idea there's no ethical billionaires. You kind of have to step on some throats to make $1 billion, regardless of who you are. And if you're not quote unquote self-made, and there are no such things as self-made billionaires, you are inheriting money that is part of a larger legacy of sometimes colonialism, sometimes slavery. Like the histories of how people get their money come from some form of capital on someone else's labor. We just don't know how. And so I think part of why we don't know about ownership is it would kind of pull the curtain back a little bit on how these systems operate, right? That's an important thing about when we acknowledge owners, typically something is going very wrong. That's normally when we are aware of who owns our team or another team. Is they said, it's a Donald Sterling, it's a Kelly Loeffler, it's a Mark, it's normally they're saying something out of turn, or there's a lockout. Those are two times that these folks emerge from, the background, unless they've made that their whole brand. Jerry Jones, Mark Cuban, they go on TV and talk, right? And so I think that's a really important part of how ownership has to work in order for us to not have these bigger questions.
Two things. One, great insights to when I eventually own the Houston Comets franchise. Thank you.
Love this.
I don't want to say a Mark Cuban, Jerry Jones type because I want to win. Two, oops, my bad. Courtney's from Dallas. It's okay. And then
I had hyped you on the Astro stuff and everything. I'm like trying to be a better person. I was like trying to celebrate you. And here we are. I am not a good person, but I think also it's important. You mentioned like how people become billionaires and like how they come into these ownerships, and how sports are like franchises are inherently political because like all the backhand deals that go into getting subsidies for stadiums and for parking lots and employees and all that stuff. So yeah, boo on that statement from Kelly Loeffler, and also just like Kelly Loeffler in general. Where should we go next? Oh, the WNBA's response. So Kelly Loeffler says, oh, boo, Black Lives Matter. We need to put American flags everywhere on our jerseys. And the WNBA says, no. Well, I mean, they say more than that. Can you explain the WNBA's reaction? Okay, so you wanted me to say something official. The thing I was going to say is Kathy's response to the letter she was sent was very succinct response. Girl, bye. Like, she's just like, we're not doing that. I'm not dealing, and part of it is I'm not going to paint Kathy out to be some kind of saint. But what I think is important is Kathy understands especially with under the new collective bargaining agreement, the players are feeling really good, right? That new collective bargaining agreement is a game changer for not only this league, but others. There's a lot of blueprints that are laid out, and I won't get nerdy. You know, this is my jammy jam. But what I'm so proud of in terms of the Players Association, the W, they did a fantastic job of advocating not only for things like salary, right? Not only talking about things like travel, but also things like parental leave, parental care, things that really, you know, if you look at the E board at the time, a lot of them weren't parents. And so there's a way they were thinking collectively, holistically about this league, about the future of this league. And NECA talks about that a lot in terms of thinking about this isn't just about what the current players need. This is about the future generations and the respect we want them to have, the pay that we want them to have. We want folks to not have the option to have to go overseas in order to pay bills. And so there's a really important momentum that the Players Association had going into it. So they signed the CBA in January. We had no idea how pandemic was going to affect us by March, but I think it became really important when we think about how players that year definitely didn't want to go overseas, right? If they didn't have to, if they were parents, if they had folks they were taking care of. And so with that momentum, Kathy knew it would be a very bad move. And part of that is because we are 5 years removed, barely, from in 2016 when WNBA players protested and were fined at that time by the president. There was not Kathy's our first commissioner of the W. The president of the WNBA fined them for their protest. And so I think Kathy was trying to avoid the PR disaster in a summer where everyone discovered racism. A lot of people discovered racism. Everyone acknowledged racism. Maybe I should say it that way, right? When it became
discovered, I think is accurate. Sorry.
Yeah, they were like, wow, like racism is trash. Like everyone's having this collective moment. And Kathy's like, people were mad in 2016 when everyone was okay with the racism. And so she knew Kathy made a business decision and told Kelly, girl, no, absolutely not. That was basically what happened. But understanding the context of 2020 is so important in understanding not only what Kelly was up against and what she was trying to do in terms of that election, but Kathy making a business decision and saying, we just got all these sponsors, all this new money into this league. We do not need it to be anything but the most progressive empowerment, feminism kind of league you can imagine.
I'm just thinking, and this is not a direct response to what you said. I can't wait to sit in on one of your classes. I think that would be so fun. But you're absolutely right. In 2016, I think it was the Minnesota Lynx, not primarily, but I remember them protesting. I remember police officers walking, off the job and declining to provide security at their events. And was it Lisa Borders who was president at the time? Was that
Lisa Borders? Yes. And so okay. It also shout out the Liberty and the Mercury as well. There were multiple teams involved, but the Lynx became, for all the reasons you just named, became kind of the face of this. And a lot of those strategies, and I harken back to that because this is the summer of 2016. This is before Colin Kaepernick takes his first knee. There's a way that we talk about the erasure of Black women throughout larger social movements, and we see it happen in real time in 2016. There's a way that I don't see enough people thinking about how Colin Kaepernick could have been watching what happened when he decides to take a knee. There's a lot of, because their direct action, right? Not only having the shirts, not only having Philando Castile, Alton Sterling's names on their shirts, there's a way that they set a precedent that I can see the evolution, right? We think about Maya Moore in 2016 helping to lead that charge, and Lindsay Whalen. Think about allyship in a particular way. There's a way that white women in the WNBA, I don't want to say all of them, because we know there's a couple out here that don't feel the same way.
Yes,
but that's another conversation for another WNBA playoffs, I suppose. But thinking about what this means in terms of solidarity, what this means in terms of direct action, what it means in terms of aligning yourself with a movement. I think that the WNBA time and time again has shown us that. And part of my work is really trying to draw this timeline and this history and acknowledge this labor, acknowledge the intelligence of these incredible athletes, acknowledge the fact that they don't assume they know it all. They partner with fantastic organizations, scholars, activists to really push things across. And so I think that moment is a snapshot of a history of this league that really helps propel us to what happens 4 years later in 2020.
Thank you so much for all of that context. I think it's very important. And I think I can't wait to see, like, as you continue to build that timeline and share it with everybody, like for people to realize that like women in the WNBA like are at the forefront of moving conversations forward, continuing to have these conversations. To your point, something that I remember from the documentary 144 on ESPN was when Sue Bird was asking the league, like, are we going to play? And they're like, she's like, don't think about what the NBA is doing. They're not thinking about us. Like, we have to make these decisions and stand on our own. And, you know, you hope that they get credit immediately, but, you know, I only remembered the Minnesota Lynx participating in the protest a few years ago and did not think about the connection to them. So hopefully, like, you know, what they're doing, the work you will be doing will like give credit where credit is due, which is not why these people do it, but I want them to have it. So that's the 2020 WNBA season. That's Kelly Loeffler. She loses the Senate election. Boom. She gets, you know, hands off or sells to a new leadership group, which includes former WNBA player Naya Montgomery. Boom. Things are great. We get a normal, again, air quotes, WNBA season in 2021.
Can I say one quick thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing we kind of didn't talk about, we talked about like BLM broadly, but I think one of the things that is very specific and maybe different from 2016 is Kelly Loeffler, in many ways, her letter to Kathy and the things that she's saying on the campaign trail really ignite and unite the WNBA, where they make these shirts that say "Vote Warnock," supporting Raphael Warnock, her opponent. They are going on an active campaign. They are getting folks registered to vote. So when we think about an incredible figure like Stacey Abrams, I make these parallels in my mind to what they're doing, right? Of they're like, this is the election that matters. And it became the election that mattered to this country. So not only talking about too close to count, not only talking about the fact that this wasn't decided in November, this went on and on and on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this runoff election became the deciding factor for the Senate of this country, who has the majority. It became the thing. And I know that none of us knew that summer. But just thinking about the momentum and thinking about Renee as also being a part of that and part of that journey, right? So it becomes particularly interesting that she is the one that replaces and is part of the group, I should say. Most time there's groups involved in ownership, but the group that replaces Kelly. It just is such a beautiful. Raphael Warnock wins. Kelly loses not only her ownership, but also her Senate seat. And so I think I just want to also highlight that they had the range to both be part of Say Her Name campaign and Kimberly Crenshaw, but also had the time to have a fantastic season and to get Kelly out the paint completely. So I just want to think about that broadly. The Vote Warnock shirts were like, I hadn't seen anything that perfect in terms of a kind of organized troll since like the boycott Beyonce shirts, you know, like it's just like chef's kiss.
Yes. And I thank you so much for bringing it up, because I also feel like that was probably the first time I had paid attention to that election. Not being in Georgia, you know, I can't vote, but, you know, you want to raise awareness. And I truly believe that was the first time. I think like Stephanie Dolson got off, you know, a team bus. And that was a big part of it. The players would get off the buses wearing these shirts instead of getting like the very typical fit photos as people look for on Instagram. You're seeing Vote Warnock. You're seeing Arrest the Cops Who Killed Breonna Taylor. You're seeing, those are the two ones I remember the most, but there were any number of messages over the course of the season for things they wanted to draw attention to. And yes, it was amazing to see, you know, that kind of being the starting point for some people and understanding what was happening in Georgia. So kudos once again to the women of the WNBA. 2021, we're getting like a normal, again, air quotes, season. What did you have any like expectations? And going back to the Atlanta Dream, did you have any expectations for the team? Were you excited? Chennedy Carter's healthy. They drafted, who did they draft? It's Aerie. Mm-hmm. Aerie McDonald from Arizona, who had like one of those moments in the tournament that we missed in 2020, right? I don't think I was really checking for Aerie McDonald, even though I had been to Arizona was one of the few teams I saw the UCLA women's basketball team play pre-pandemic. What were your expectations for the Atlanta Dream coming out of the draft before 2 weeks before the season started and their coach dipped?
Yeah. So, no, everyone was sleep on air. I think the writers, even basketball writers were notoriously sleep on her, and were hyping other players at that time. And, I no disrespect to Paige or UConn. There's a hierarchy. There's a hegemony in basketball on the teams and players that get covered. And so, for me, she came out of nowhere, but she was so exciting. And I thought that there's some energy that could be happening in Atlanta. This idea of like, they saged, Kelly's office down and they like got the bad energy, bad juju out. Like, this could be the fresh start. This is a team that is so easy to root for because of everything that they've gone through. Right. And then to lose Nikki, I think everyone, and then, like the Baylor job, there was just so much happening, both in terms of thinking about Kim Mulkey and LSU. And it's just, there was a lot of shuffling happening. Right. Yeah. And so everyone, every couple of days, because there was also the thing with Kim where there was a long time where we knew, but it wasn't official. Do you remember this time period where every couple of days we were waiting for an announcement? And so part of this, I want to credit the timing is terrible. But part of it, I think, is either they were negotiating. I don't know what was happening in that time period. But between the rumors of Kim leaving and then her actually leaving, that put everything in a weird kind of twist. Maybe they were already interested in Nikki. Maybe things were already kind of going on behind the scenes. But the actual announcement, everything happened in such a terrible, lack of 2-week notice equivalent in basketball, where it was like, what do we do now? Right. Yeah. And so I think that the optics of it are bad. I will say from the other side of it is I just don't know what the actual timeframes of when she actually knew, when things were actually official, they could announce. I would hope internally the team would have had more information, but it's also really difficult knowing that they also had their GM get fired, right? Or they parted ways.
Yes.
However one wants to read that. But there's a lot of the front office. There's just a lot happening on that side. It's really tumultuous. And then obviously everything that happened on the ownership side, you're getting a new ownership group coming in. So for me, I started with these high hopes, but I think having Nikki, who was like the consistent piece here, losing her, I was like, oh, everything is in shambles there. They just got to rally and just try to have a respectable season is really kind of what I thought.
I think that's totally reasonable. Like you said, given all of that happened in the weeks leading up to the start of the season. So we're finally getting to maybe what the scope of the initial episode was going to be. But then like so much happened for Atlanta. Chennedy Carter is back, not looking for redemption or anything, but like trying to, have like a good sophomore season, no sophomore slump. And there is a bit of a scuffle. So I'll just read like the description from the Next Hoops. Thanks everyone at the Next Hoops. During the first quarter of Sunday's contest between the Atlanta Dream and the Las Vegas Aces, Atlanta guard Courtney Williams, who we will also be talking about, approached Chennedy Carter on the bench. Williams, who saw that Carter looked disengaged as other teammates cheered, went over to Carter and emphatically told her to improve her attitude. The two had an argument, and after checking out at the end of the first quarter, Carter did not play in the second quarter and remained in the locker room for the second half, and we've not seen her since. That the not seen her since is my own sentence. But after the game, Carter, who was upset about her playing time and the team's success, approached Williams. After Williams told Carter that she wasn't interested in hearing about playing time, Carter made noises about wanting to fight her teammate. Williams made it clear to the locker room that she had zero interest in fighting anyone, and immediately after Carter confronted her, she backed away and left the situation. Several players came over to check on the situation. Physical altercation did not occur. And on Monday following the game, the team's coaching staff and ownership suspended Carter till further notice. And we've not seen her since. I guess it's hard to say like what was your reaction in the moment, because we haven't seen her play in a year and a half, but like what do you think today?
For since July.
Yes. Oh yeah, not a year and a half, several months. But what do you think today?
So Kennedy had an injury, if I'm not mistaken, earlier in the 2021 season. So she had just come back. I want to say she was out for a little bit. The season, again, time is a social construct. Don't have a perfect sense of time. But she was out for an injury. She came back. And so she was just now kind of getting her reps minutes up, et cetera. Again, key piece to this team. There's no denying the impact that she has on this team. And the team had been decimated by a few different injuries. And then Cheyenne had COVID, and then she was pregnant. And so there were just all these things happening. And so I think for me, one of the things I thought about, a lot of what I struggle with in my own research is just the lack of information and knowledge. And a lot of the gaps in the past few years, I've been working on this book in some iteration since 2015, and a lot has changed in the WNBA since then. And part of it has been a lot of athletes, a lot of advocates of the W have been filling in the gaps of mainstream media. So part of it is when something that's a spectacle or particularly salacious or interesting happens, you want to go to your sources and figure out like who's talked to who knows someone in the locker room, who was standing outside the locker room when this happened or whatever.
Who broke the locker room door?
Yes. Doors are getting so much play right now. Right. But that is the frustrating part when there are so few folks that are, actually allowed to fully be beat reporters and travel and cover this league the way it deserves to be covered. I think there's that. There's also this secrecy that's sometimes about, playing nice or trying to sell the league as a nice league. There's ways that even fans police each other online. I see that a lot in terms of don't say anything bad about XYZ. When I see their male counterparts, those fan bases will talk about people's mamas. And I'm not saying that's right, but I think there's a way, there's a decency, politeness that a decorum that we're all supposed to aspire to. And so an altercation for me between two teammates that both want to win. Courtney and Chennedy are both competitors. They both grind it out. And I actually love the idea of checking someone. And I'll say this, I love the accountability respectfully, right? Again, we don't have to be talking about people's mamas or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But I like the accountability of like, stay in the game, right? Because I have seen so often when championship caliber players talk about their first couple seasons in the league, the folks that held them accountable, that taught them stuff that really helped them hone their game. And I think that Courtney Williams is, because she's such a great player, she was starting to be put in a position of leadership in a particular way. She has a very specific leadership style. It's not for everyone, apparently. Mm-hmm. But for me, the mystery around Chennedy and where she is, we know she's alive. She's tweeted since then. Someone has seen her. But if it were not for that, we don't know if she was still held in the locker room since July, because there has not been transparency, at least in terms of the league. Whenever folks ask about what's going on with Chennedy, where is she, what's happening, it's always these really vague, well, she hasn't done what she needs to do to return to the court. She hasn't, but there's no semblance of, well, what are the steps? What are the things that need to happen? And so due to the lack of coverage, right, I cannot imagine this happening in the NFL or the NBA where someone's just suspended indefinitely and we just continue to not get updates on their status, right? I think that it's a huge, again, from a labor perspective, I have really big questions because this affects someone's labor, especially when we think about going into the off season, going into potential trades. The way that player is talked about in media matters, the ways that they're able to advocate or not for themselves. An Olympics year, most folks thought end of the Olympic break, we'll see Chennedy back on the court. End of July, we'll see her in practices, we'll see her in games. And that has not been the case, right? We did not see her through the end of the season. And so I think about how she's both an impact player that, not saying that the Dream would have definitely made the playoffs, but she is a game changer. And so I think about, she could have gotten them on the cusp or close. There were games that could have been winnable with her on the court. So it's a bad business, bad sports decision, bad media decision. So the Dream looks funny in the light to me because I don't know what's happening there with them. And so for me, everyone ends up looking bad because there isn't transparency. And from the media members I follow on Twitter, all of their efforts have largely kind of gone, their efforts have largely kind of not come to any kind of fruition because there's nothing that they're being told, even when they push for it. Where's Chennedy? Is she going to be available? It's just such a weird situation that would never happen in men's sports on any front. And we got to talk about that.
No, you're 100% correct. And in your explanation, you literally answered every question I wanted to ask and get your opinion on. Like, how, like, the Dream have handled this poorly. To your point, like, they haven't said what the steps are, like what they want her to do to get back on the court. And I feel like that's almost a missed opportunity for them to, like, essentially paint Chennedy as a bad guy, as a villain. If they said, we asked her to apologize, we asked her to make a statement, we asked her to do this, and they're like, she's not doing that, then it's like, oh, Chennedy is not a team player, she's bad. But like, they could have done that. And also, to your point, I think in terms of like the decorum and how women are held to a different account and how the fan bases are different, like, maybe I don't think the WNBA necessarily wants villains. I don't know. I feel like there's been an opportunity over the last several years, going back to even Chennedy Ogwumike, when she kind of forced Connecticut's hand to go to the Sun, or to go to the Sparks. Like,
Suns to Sparks, yeah.
Make her a villain. I love Chennedy. I love what she did. I love that she did it for herself. She is great on ESPN, but like, you could have made her a villain. You can make. I feel like Diana Taurasi is kind of like a bully, not so much a villain, just like the big person on the playground, but not with like evil intent or anything. And I think that, I don't know. I messaged you like last week. I think Diana Taurasi would be like a terrifying middle manager, just roasting the mess out of you, but also like very good at her job. And I'm really glad she has basketball as an outlet. But yes, I agree with everything you're saying. And that if, I don't know who was like if like LaMelo, if Charlotte was like, LaMelo's behaving badly, he's not going to play. LeVar Ball would not sleep. He would. None of us
would sleep. LeVar would be yelling at us on every platform, and
he would get it. He would get that platform. To your point, I don't think Chennedy has, nobody. I don't think there's like a LeVar Ball equivalent in her life in terms of like how much attention like someone in her family is getting, but they haven't had that opportunity, except maybe her brother tweeted once, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, her brother had tweeted out. But I mean, what is the appropriate penalty in your opinion? Like, what should have happened? Like, best case scenario, how should the Dream have handled this altercation?
That's a good question. And I'll answer based on what we know, but like, we don't know a ton, right? It didn't extend it. What we know, or what we've been told, is that it didn't get physical. That's it, really. It didn't get physical. So she threw a tantrum. So you suspend her for a few games, conduct detrimental to the team, I guess, and let her like come back after. I think like letting her come back after the Olympic break would have been great. Based on what we know, it didn't get physical and she threw a tantrum. Did she call somebody's mom out their name? What else was she doing? I don't know, but maybe like a 2 or 3 game suspension to get your mind right and then come back. Maybe.
I would just fine her. It's just a fine to me, know? And I know I say just a fine, right? I think that she's, because of her rookie salary, I think she's one of the lowest paid players on that team. Mm-hmm. But with the new CBA, her salary is set to go up exponentially pretty soon. Mm-hmm. So I think a fine that is, relevant to her actual salary level, I think would be appropriate, because I don't see getting into it, like, not even on the court. Like, if we're on the sidelines, we're teammates, we're talking, it gets heated, and this continues later on behind closed doors. Again, just going off the few things that we have been allowed to know. Mm-hmm. We are 1 week into the NBA season. We've already seen that happen in the NBA, right? And so my thing is, all the things that we are hearing players say to each other, say to their own teammates, like to opponents. And I'm so tired of the double standard. This is not just a basketball issue. I'm tired of it when Serena's doing it. I'm tired of the ways that men get to behave badly. And to your point about villains, right? I think that Courtney is a fantastic villain. Courtney has been a villain for a while. Mm-hmm. There's a fantastic profile Brittany did on her, like maybe 2 years ago. And it's so great because she's literally talking about this in the piece of like, we need more of these rivalries. We need more people we know because not only our knowledge of college basketball, but the W, we know a lot of people that don't like each other. Sometimes it's like, we were both in the Final Four. You beat my team. I can never get that off my back. Sometimes it's like you dated so-and-so and I also dated so-and-so and I don't mess with you for that reason. Sometimes it's about an Olympic snub. Sometimes it's about something that happened overseas. I love all of that. I love when it's team-based, where it's like the fan bases don't like each other. I love when it's really petty and individual, because that's part of sports. These are full humans, full people that shouldn't have to play nice. I'm using air quotes, play nice. I want them to be in their full humanity. And if it's beef, if it's people that play on the same team and don't like each other, we know plenty of examples of that across all sports.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good for the sport because it's more coverage. It's more folks that are like, ooh, these two teams don't like each other. I got to see them play tonight, right? Yep. The new rivalry that emerged out of the finals, I cannot wait. Sky Mercury better be primetime ABC first game of the season next season. I want the door to be there. I want the championship ring ceremony to happen like right there in their, like, I want it all, you know,
and Chicago to give away the shirts with Clea Copper and stuff.
Yes. I want it to be on every chair. I want it to be on every chair, because part of it is we cannot get away from the fact that sport, political, absolutely, but absolutely about entertainment as well. And there are so many ways that the NBA has loosened up. Let's talk about the NBA was not always this way. David Stern's NBA was very different. Mm-hmm. But now there's so many opportunities across the board for players to be their fullest selves, where they want to advocate for something important or be petty and unimportant on Instagram. I fully support that. And I feel like there's a missed opportunity here. And there's also a huge violation in terms of what rights players have, right? And I really am interested in knowing more about how the Players Association is thinking through this as well, because once we allow teams to take someone off the court indefinitely without any accountability, any follow-up, these are huge issues. And it's not unique to the W. When this happens in baseball, when this happens in other sports, the Players Associations typically are like, can either contest the fines or suspensions. But there's also a transparency that the teams are required to give to said Players Association. And I feel like the Dream have been able to be not accountable in many, many important ways that sets a bad I think for me, this season for the Dream sets a bad precedent of the future, what teams are able to do to players that are a quote unquote problem for them. And problem is being read very broadly, because as we understand this, I do not understand this to be anything different than how folks talk to each other in the sport constantly. I just need to know what happened differently. And there's just no transparency.
Right. And you brought up a good example before we started recording, talking about like Anthony Davis and Dwight Howard, right? Yes. Two giant humans, you know, arguing on the bench.
Yeah.
My mom messaged me. She's like, why were Dwight Howard and Anthony Davis fighting? I was like, I don't know, Patricia, I was at the Astros game. So I don't know. But like she had already heard about it. Mm-hmm. Neither one of them is going to get suspended. You know, Dwight, I think, addressed it in the post-game conference, said we squashed it. And on the flip side, you kind of had when KD and Draymond went at it, and they both spoke recently about how poorly the organization handled it. So maybe also organizations aren't equipped to deal. They want to be seen as fair. They want to be seen as something, and they're just like, they can't handle negative vibes in the locker room, I guess. I don't know.
It's also like to the things we've already talked about, the dysfunction and changeover happening in the front office, I think is part of this too. A really strong front office, a really strong coaching staff, I think has the ability to turn this around, right? But when everything is in transition and kind of disheveled in a particular way, I think that's also part of the formula of how this perfect storm happens with Chennedy. And there's a need for maybe just some consistency, getting good folks in. I think they're on the path to that.
Mm-hmm.
But getting good folks in that can help manage this stuff, because the things that have happened to them over the course of the season aren't insurmountable, right? They're just things that need good adults to handle, like in a way that makes sense for everyone. And I don't think that resolution happened in a good way that made sense for Courtney or Chennedy. And I think that that's really frustrating to me, because they're both incredible players that now have this as part of their story in a way that it could have easily been resolved. If you Google either one of their names, right? Well, Courtney's is a little different now, but at the time, time, that was the thing. And it felt really unfair to both of them that the entire truth wasn't out. And there wasn't to me, this is the equivalent. When I was in high school, I was in PALS, which is this like peer mediation group.
Same.
I was like, PALS could have resolved this in a quick session, like
let's do some trust falls and, get back to the court. Like,
right. We could have this could have made the team stronger. And instead it did quite the opposite. It destabilized in a different way.
And instead we're doing a podcast episode on it. I'm not going to count the months and embarrass myself, but several months later.
Yes.
But you mentioned Googling people and what results you might get.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone were to Google Courtney Williams, what would come up?
Right now, the biggest thing that would come up involves an altercation that happened at a obviously high-end mobile food establishment called Tenders and Bites.
Yes.
And so, first of all, shout out to Tenders and Bites. I hope they're getting so much new clientele coming through there. But this altercation that happened in front of this food truck is something that happened back in May. So let's again talk about timetables, sense of time. Mm-hmm. This happened in May, this fight that involved not only Courtney Williams, but Kalani Brown and Crystal Bradford. This fight happens, and the organization is aware of it. As we mentioned before, Renee Montgomery, incredible WNBA player, is now the first former player to be owner exec in a particular way for the Dream. So this happens, and they're like, they get the story, and the story is just, basically overpowered. Folks were coming at Courtney. They jumped in to help. They weren't going to let her get jumped, whatever. And it was kind of, they saw some video of it, like 10 to 15 seconds, I read. And they were like, non-issue. Season happens. Things are going on. And now, mind you, we've talked about an undercovered, underrepresented league that deserves all of the things. A big way that athletes and advocates of the league have tried to intervene in this larger way that women's sports, specifically the W, aren't covered is by creating their own media, which is very useful, handy. I love it. And Courtney Williams and her wife have a YouTube channel, and it's very interesting content. It's like a reality show, quite frankly. And they posted an episode that talked about the food truck fight. And what we learned in that is that it was much more involved. I would not have caught it if not for you being like, put this on the internet. And I was like,
I'm just like shaking my hands because she told on herself. Nobody knew about this.
No one.
I wasn't
I'm not on the Tenders and Bites Instagram feed. I'm not up on what they're doing. We would not have known.
No. Like, and it's the way it's funny. You mentioned how like there's been a community of people, the advocates for the WNBA, who are doing this coverage when, the mainstream outlets aren't. So I'll get on Twitter and someone will be like, did she just post a video of herself fighting? She has a mean right hook. And I'm like, what are they talking about? Let me do some scrolling. You find the video, y'all, it is a YouTube video, like a reality show. They do a talking head where they're like, boom, we went out, we did this, we did that. To be fair, I'm a terrible person and skipped through all of that and went straight to the fight.
You didn't want the setup.
Didn't care. I was just like, oh my gosh, they're really out in these streets at Tenders and Bites throwing punches.
It's a long fight too.
It is. Yeah. It could have been several rounds and, by time, but they just did that to themselves. And or she posted it herself. But again, the Dream knew about it. The video comes out. I sent it the first day I sent it to you, it's there. Like the next day, it's private but still listed. And then like the third or fourth day, it's gone. Who all was there? We know Courtney Williams there. We know Kalani Brown was there. I don't know if she was actually in the video, but she was there. And then another player, Crystal Bradford, was in there getting some swings in. Yeah. Tell us about the aftermath, or like what happens once everybody else has watched the YouTube video.
So not the equivalent, but I will say in other leagues, there have been these moments where they quote unquote say they knew the details of something. And then we see the full thing come out. And TMZ is like, hey, here's what really happened. Except, I mean, TMZ jumped on the story, but before that, you tell on yourself and you're like, here's the whole 40-minute breakdown. Mm-hmm. Then we got some different issues, right? So the team does the thing where they say, oh, we weren't aware of everything that's happening, right? Again, this is a really interesting thing. If I'm in a front office of a team, I'm not out here trying to act like I've been fighting everybody forever. But if I see 10 seconds of something, I'm like, was this the whole fight? What other information? I'm calling Tinder, but I'm going to Tinder Bites. I'm getting some Tinders and some bites. And I'm like, hey, were you here? Like in May, I'm going to do a little investigation. I'm not going to say benefit of the doubt, because part of it is, I don't want to be in this kind of double jeopardy of like going back and saying, okay, now we're going to punish you now for this, right? And so I want to be both fair to the athlete. They say this is happening. We're going to look into it. Thanks for letting us know. You were just defending yourself. I'm going to talk to Tinder, the guy at Tinders and Bites. I'm going to be like, hey, what happened? I'm going to do that in May because it's May when this happened. The problem of bringing this into the current month that we're in, right? Or last month. But thinking about that is now you're going off of this information. The players told on themselves. So there's that. That's not prudent. But now it's this weird, oh, now we have to punish this person. Now we got to make an example out of this person. And these knee-jerk reactions, which to me is not unlike what happened to Chennedy, right? Now Courtney's experiencing the other side of this. Mm-hmm. Is like, oh, we're done with Crystal. We're done with Chennedy, right? And to me, it feels like the team didn't do their due diligence. Courtney definitely shouldn't have posted that. For me, if I'm assaulting anyone, even if I'm defending myself, I'm not putting it on the internet. And I saw Crystal's reaction to the video being posted. And I feel for Crystal the most in this because Crystal did not ask to be on this episode. Crystal gets cut and is just like, I thought this was resolved in May. I've been gone on, lived my life, like played for the team, had gotten injured. And it's like, Crystal's like, I did not want to relive that moment. And I think that's the thing I'm sitting with now is Crystal's like, I feel so bad, but I'm not a violent person, but like, what do I do when someone is outnumbered? And I do think that Crystal was jumping in really to defend Courtney. And mm-hmm. I mean, that's all you can ask for from a friend, from a teammate. Yeah. But I think that what is frustrating about this is this didn't have to happen. Again, the players and the team both look bad in this to me. And it kind of shows where we are in this larger social media sphere, like I think there's a way that someone that, I'm never quick enough with my phone when a world star moment is happening. So I've witnessed some fights of this kind, but I just was like, I just can't, things are happening. I can't believe this is happening. She's beating her with her shoe now. And so, it could have easily in May been someone that was waiting for their Tinders and Bites that starts recording and records this whole thing. So it's possible that in this highly mediated world we live in where everyone has a camera, she could have gotten in big trouble for this in May. She actually got off scot-free. And that's what's infuriating. It's just live your life, mm-hmm. The fact that you tell on yourself on this episode, which is, and her wife has like 870,000. They have like big subscribers on this show. So, you're putting this information out. And maybe the only thing I will say in Courtney's defense is maybe she thought this won't become an issue because I already told them this happened back in May. It's dead. Mm-hmm. But like, it actually wasn't.
It was not. yes, the league should have done their investigating back in May. And I did not like consider, Crystal's thoughts on it, right? Like she didn't ask for this, like she did what she was supposed to do and like moved on. And to your point, like because the team didn't do anything, now they're dealing with the repercussions. And to your point about like observing world star moments, I was at an Astros game and somebody tried to start a fight with some White Sox fans. Did I record it? Yes. Did I post it? No, because I'm watching and I was like, man, now I feel bad for this guy. Mm-hmm. Like the White Sox fan that got into the altercation. And it's like, I don't know what the conclusion is other than that, like, man, it's weird to like have these fights, these videos on your phone, and like, what do you do with them? And like, what are the consequences? And like, what does it say about me as a human being? That I was just like, I need the person down 2 rows to move to the left so I can see everything. It's weird. So I do have a couple questions on your thoughts about like how the team has handled it. And more importantly, like how the league has handled it. Because there's kind of an important thing for Courtney and Crystal in that they were free agents. Like they actually weren't even like technically part of the team. They're unrestricted free agents. They could have signed anywhere. Should the Atlanta Dream have released that statement saying we're not going to sign them? And should the league have been more involved at any point during the process, like Kathy herself?
I think at this point in the game, I think the league should have been more involved, right? Because the league should investigate what the Dream knew and when. Mm-hmm. I think the Players Association should always be involved. This is I will always kind of raise the flag for unionization in general. But I think that the union should be involved. I think the league should be involved. We can't just let teams move without any kind of accountability because we don't let players move without being accountable. So we definitely shouldn't let teams move that way. In terms of the question about the idea of saying they're going to release them, Christina Williams, who everyone should follow, and all of her important, incredible work, was really the one who helped break this story further in terms of having this first exclusive interview with Courtney's agent. And, I don't know if she's in the best hands in terms of how she's being represented, because there are bigger questions, right? So it's not only the player's being represented by this agent who's trying to negotiate and figure things out. There's the team, there's the ownership, there's the league, there's the Players Association. All are really key pieces here. But one of the things that I'm struggling with in terms of what news gets released when and by whom is we have to talk about Renee. Renee is an owner of a team, a former athlete in this league, who also has an ESPN contract. And when news breaks like Courtney Williams and Crystal and Kalani being at the food truck, she's asked to comment on it. And I sometimes don't know if she's commenting, she's straddling this line between commenting as an owner and commenting as a commentator on a network. Mm-hmm. This is further troubling for me sometimes when I see her tweets and she's talking about W players, like, go get your bag, go get blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you're an owner who is handing out the bags.
Yes.
So what does it mean? What does it mean in this larger, I use this term, sports media complex, sports media nexus, the relationship between media organizations and sports organizations, athletes, the audience, the fans, all this content that gets produced? She is firmly rooted. She has a foot in all of these places. And so tampering, we're always on the cusp of tampering, kind of. And this is not just a Renee issue. I'm using her because this is the context, right? Mm-hmm. When someone like Magic Johnson is commentating, so, there are other folks that have multiple interests. And so when they talk about a team, it's not just them talking as a former athlete, when they also have vested stakes, right? And so I think that it's funny how people can think about tampering when 2 front office people are dating, for example. I'm going back to a very old example with the Lakers and the Knicks. But thinking about that, like, we have this very clear vision, but with media, it's very strange, right? And so I don't think that we figured out And I'm interested, I would love to hear from Renee how she navigates this new world that she finds herself in, because I see sometimes the way that she's talking on the internet, she's talking as a former athlete, talking to athletes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I see it as she's talking in a leadership role as the owner of a franchise. And sometimes I see her talking as a media member. And I think that I'm proud of her for all the things she's accomplished. I don't know when she sleeps, but I'm also really worried when something like this happens. It kind of exacerbates the situation, right? When she talks about, can we ask her where Courtney Williams should go? Can we ask her where Chennedy is being held? Because what I've started
Chennedy to see is being held. Sorry, that just like.
Sorry. But, I've seen a lot of fans, rightfully so, trolling Renee on Twitter because they're like, where is Chennedy at though? You're talking about this, but you're not talking about this, right? You want to wear your owner hat here, but not be accountable to fans here. And so this question of what news is released and when gets stickier to me with someone like Renee. And I think that going forward, the team has to figure that out. ESPN has to figure that out. Most importantly, Renee has to figure out where she finds herself in all of this, because I think there's a weird tension that seems like it's getting louder and louder.
No, 100%. And the internet trolls are fantastic. Again, they never, I haven't seen anybody cross the line, but it's like they're asking the questions, as people say, questions that need answers. Like, where is this? What is happening? Like, how are you trying to, talk about this team or this player or whatever, but you need to clean up your own backyard. So I kind of have 2 more questions. Well, technically 3. You're a GM. You need a guard. Is Courtney on your short list?
I'm going to say yes, because under the new CBA, salary cap stuff is going to be a big problem for a lot of people next year. Mm-hmm. And you may be able to get Courtney for the lower than you probably normally would be able to. I am not an agent and or a GM, but from a numbers perspective, I think that Courtney will add value to any team. I think that the question is about juggling personalities, right? Based on who's already on your squad. I will say, I think she's a really strong personality and a strong player. And there are teams that can use that direction, that energy, that aggression. I feel like she has so much packed in such a small frame. I think that she's incredible. But I do think that you need a strong front office, a strong organization to support her, right, in these next steps. And I want her to lean into the villain, right? So I also want a team that gets that and will let Courtney be their fullest self, right? I want fullest Courtney at all times. And so I think that's a huge piece for me. But yes, I why not?
I mean, I agree. And it does, I don't know if it makes sense, in terms of their roster. I don't know what contracts are looking like in Vegas, but I would love her with Bill Laimbeer. I would love her with Bill Laimbeer. And again, that's just me matching up the personality of the coach and the player. Yeah, the energy, but we'll see. Same thing with Crystal, Kalani, if they end up on another roster. I know Kalani kind of not bounced around, but traded and trying to find a roster spot. But let's talk about finally the new coach, Tanisha Wright, announced in the last week or so. Mm-hmm. They only have 5 people on the roster. A very broad question, but I've taken up a lot of your time. So where do you think Atlanta goes from here? They have to get their house in order. They have to get their roster in order. And we've talked about it several times throughout the course of the interview. Consistency. Where do you think Atlanta goes from here in building out a roster and a culture to kind of get over the last 2 years?
Yeah, I think that it's actually not the worst thing that they don't have a lot of folks signed on for next season, because it is literally a rebuilding year in so many different ways for this team. Shout out to Coach Wright. I think one of the things that's so amazing about Tanisha Wright being the coach of that team is, one of the as we approach the 50th anniversary of Title IX, one of the biggest issues that we've had with Title IX is that as women's sports have become more visible, profitable, funded, men have been in these coaching rank spaces, right? It's an unintended consequence of Title IX is that with these positions, we would love to see more women in these positions, and with the league being 80% Black, especially when we think about the racial and gender disparities in coaching, it is more rare than it should be to have Black women appointed to head coaching positions in this league, especially. But it's unfortunately something we're dealing with. So I just want to start from the perspective of, I'm really glad that Coach Wright is in that place. Not only because she has the coaching acumen to back it up, but because I do believe it's really important that former players get coaching opportunities and not just assistant coaching opportunities at the college and professional ranks, because there's a lot of assistant coaches that have been in assistant coach purgatory for a long time. And I will step off of my soapbox on that. So the other side of it is what they need to do going forward. So yes, building the roster and deciding this is really vague and a little, me being weird Aquarian, but they got to decide like who they are, like who is this team? What's their personality? Like, and I think that should guide not only who they sign. I think there's a way that we live in this space of advanced analytics. There's a way we could analytically piece this team together of like what makes the most sense quantitatively. I think it's going to be a mixture of both though. I think Coach Wright has to decide, do you want some I think every team needs enforcers, but what do you want the personality of this team to be, right? Do you want a bunch of shooters? Like I'm interested in how having new front office folks and new coaching, hopefully some stability. I'm rooting for this team on that front. What could this team be? That's the good part of rebuilding. You go through a breakup, right? And you're like, who am I? What could I be? What am I going to be like? What's the market like? You're just asking all these questions. Yeah. And I want to say that the Dream have gone through some bad breakups, some of them their fault, some of them not of their own volition, but let's just say it's been rough out there, and they're swiping into a new season. And I think that they have to decide their identity as a team. When you mention the aces, we know what the aces bring, right? We know what Bill Lambert brings to that. I think the energy that he brings as a coach, but also the ways that he's teaching players, right? You know what you're going to get when you play them. I keep rooting for one coach in particular in the W to get fired, because I think that the team that I love, he is leading them into the ground. And I'm terrified that the good players we have will leave. I'm talking about the Sparks and Derek Fisher. But I think that having an identity as a team, right? Who we are determines who we bring in and what the energy feels like. And so without getting more metaphysical than I already have, I think this team doesn't have an identity besides being dysfunctional right now. And so I think Coach Wright has an uphill battle this season in reclaiming what Atlanta could be, right? They had this freedom fighter energy that we loved and talked about so much in 2020. And, now they're just kind of seen as the reality show. They need a reality show. Let's just talk about it. I would love the Sky to get a reality show. I would also love the Dream to get a reality show, because I think, Amazon Prime does this for men's teams. Why can't they kind of get a season with? Because I think there's something that we really get when we get to see how a team is built, how it comes together, how the pieces fit. I'm so fascinated by championship teams and how it's always, we signed someone last minute, or this person didn't resign, so we end up with this. It's like all the pieces come into play. It have to be, back-to-backs are more rare than we would like to admit, because it's hard to keep those core pieces because of capitalism and how it works. But also everyone has to be in a certain place in their life and career. Like championships are really magical times and places. And so I think that part of that is establishing the identity. That's one thing I think every championship team has in common. It has a really strong sense of who they are, what they're doing, who they're doing it for. And so I think that that's a huge piece for Atlanta. They just need to sign some people.
Yes. They have like one person under protected contract and then four other folks. yes, you mentioned earlier, sports, they're political, they're entertainment, and you need these storylines and you need the spaces to tell those stories. I forget who I was talking to, but they're like, why doesn't the WNBA have a Hard Knocks? The Atlanta Dream as Hard Knocks with all 5 players on the court trying to figure out what drills they can run. I'd watch that. That'd be great. Like Tanisha Wright, like, is she going to be the GM too? Did they say?
I'm not sure about
I'm not
that.
sure. I didn't see that when I was looking, but then you mentioned Derek Fisher, who's like GM and coach in Los Angeles. And it's like, would he be better at one or the other or neither? Like, what would be the best outcome? You're making a face. You won't get any arguments here. But yes, that's it. Y'all, if you're listening, you just got an excellent walkthrough of the history of the Atlanta Dream. Where in the world is Chennedy Carter, which was the initial concept of this episode. And then we watched the Courtney Williams fight on YouTube that she put on YouTube herself of her own free will and volition. That was
walked us through. Like,
yeah, yes.
It wasn't just like a little cell phone video. It was a production. So there were multiple moments where you could have been like, editing this, maybe it's not a good idea.
Yeah, it was not a short video. Like in addition to the fight. Again, I only remember because I scrolled through all of it to get to the fighting part. Again, not a great person, but now you know where Chennedy Carter is. So if you're looking for a team to root for, maybe you're a new fan of the podcast and now you've listened to several episodes about the WNBA or women's sports, you can root for the Atlanta Dream. You can send Renee Montgomery tweets and demand Chennedy Carter's release. You can buy Ari McDonald jerseys, all of that. Courtney, thank you so much. Before you go, I do have one last question that I like to ask all of the guests of That Can't Be Right. What is something that you think can't be right? It can be in your research, your job, in sports, food. It can't be broadly the pandemic because we know and we're trying to get through it all together. But what is something to you that can't be right?
I'm gonna be really honest here. I spend so much time contemplating Havana syndrome. I think about it way more often than I should. If you do not know what Havana syndrome is, please go look it up immediately. There have been more and more cases. Finally, authorities are acknowledging it's been happening to folks for years, decades. And it keeps me up at night as someone that has no government affiliation and will probably never be targeted by Havana syndrome. I am fascinated by the ways that technology and technological weapons are used in these various ways. Look up Havana syndrome. It cannot be right. Like, it cannot be right that this is how we are waging warfare in 2021. And so Havana syndrome, if you do an episode on that, if you find someone willing to talk about it on the record, because a lot of folks won't, it will just bless my little conspiracy theory heart.
I love that as an idea for an episode because my neighbors and I were talking about it recently. And then the government was like, oh, no, it's fine.
Yeah, they do that every few times. These ebbs and flows of like, they're like, okay, it maybe happened to a couple people at one embassy in this one country, but then there's like 5 more countries show up. And it's like neurologically can be proven the effects of Havana syndrome. Everyone was told that they were just pretending, they were sleep deprived, whatever, but it has happened in the United States. It has happened near the White House.
I was only familiar with the cases like from Cuba or whatever, where they were like, oh no, you're drinking like bad rum or something. But girl,
it's happened so many countries, and we're finding out more and more about how much cover up has happened in terms of different operatives, different officials that have had it happen to them. And just to be clear, my general theory is like Havana syndrome being a side effect of like they're tapping into people's, phones and laptops that they're carrying. And this is just the side effect that happens, right? So it's actually not to actually harm people, but it's the side effect of using that technology to get data from folks. So that's my thought. I actually don't think it's being used as a weapon against officials, but rather folks that have sensitive information. Part of, using this technology is that it affects you neurologically, and it sounds like pure torture. It sounds terrible. So anyway, everyone go do your Googles, hit me up. Let me know what you think. Tell me your own conspiracy theories, but Havana syndrome is dominating a huge part of my thought process these days.
I love it. I hope I can find someone to talk about it, even if I have to change their voice. That would
be
Oh
yeah. Give me some modulation. Yes. Make them a dark, shadowy figure, even though it's going to be just audio, just for the authenticity,
Yes, and then post a picture. Yeah, can't wait. I can't wait. So many. I love getting ideas from these answers. Yeah. But y'all, that for real is the end of the episode. Thank you, Dr. Cox, Courtney, so much. Again, if you need a team to root for, check out the Atlanta Dream. WNBA season will kick off, 9 months from now. Follow along at TCBR Pod for goodies from me. Courtney, would you like to tell people where they can connect with the Sound of Victory and engage with your scholarship?
Sure. You can connect the Sound of Victory. It's thesoundofvictory.org. You can connect with us at The Sound of Victory on Instagram, and I'm on the gram and on Twitter at Court M. Cox.
Yes, frequently confused for Homegirl from the
richer white one. Yes,
but you're my favorite.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Yes. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your day.